Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Okay, so today's video is going to be about something that I do that's called timeline therapy. I'm a certified master practitioner of timeline therapy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share two stories with you, two real experiences that I've personally had, and one that was shared with me by Dr. Bob Bays. He was the head, the head of the Syracuse University Psychology Department. So before we get into that, just so you know, if you guys don't already know, I am a professionally trained personal development coach, life coach. I'm certified as an NLP trainer, master hypnotherapist. That's Ericksonian hypnosis. And the reason why I mention that is because it is the most powerful form of therapeutic hypnosis. I'm also, as I recently said, certified and trained as a master practitioner in timeline therapy and also Reiki, Huna, Pranic healing. Something called neuro-associative conditioning, which is done by John Overdurf, and a couple other things, which I think that's enough. And yes, I did go to college and I studied psychology. And no, I did not get my doctorate degree. So here's what I want to do. If you guys are interested in doing timeline therapy, what I'd be willing to do for, let's see, June, July. I'll do it for a month. Okay, so we're at July 26th right now. So let's say between now and August 26th, we will do, all right, so normally I charge $225 to $250 per session. That's always been a standard. I've lowered it down to $125 because the economy was so bad. So what I want to do now is I want to offer you guys 3 sessions that you have to complete between now and August 26th at $75 per session. So if you're interested, let me know. And remember, I also do other forms of therapy and healing work. And I would also like to mention, if you haven't gone to the end of the videos, there is a PayPal link in the description box where if you want, you can go ahead and make a donation. And the music will be going down in about 15 seconds. Okay, so one of the biggest things that I've learned when it comes to studying different forms of therapy, doing work with people, is it really is one word. It's a huge part, and I honestly could say it's probably 60% or more of what therapeutic work is. And that word is perspective. Shifting perspectives gives you all the freedom and power and happiness and joy that you've ever wanted in your life. At one point in time, I had business cards and big bold letters on the front from left to right that just said shifting perspectives, and people are like, well, what's this? I'm like, it's therapy. So it's easy to say shift your perspective or look at it from a different perspective, but it's harder to do. So over the years, the decades and decades that I've been doing this work, it became really obvious. All I'm doing with people is just shifting their perspectives. What do you guys think I've been doing with you throughout these entire video series for the last 4 years? So one way of looking at perspectives is you're all the way at the left end of the scale, and then you can go all the way to the middle and then all the way to the right. That's one range of perspective, okay? Then you can look at the circular 360 degrees perspective shift, okay? I like to use that one a lot more, but there's something else that I do, and timeline therapy is the one that introduces this and brings this into power. So instead of having only a straight line from left to right, okay, or having a circle that goes around in a circle, shifting perspectives from 0 to 1 to 2 to 10 to 15, 20, 120, 150, 160, 180, 190, 222, 365, is you can also go up and around in a circle that way, just like a globe. So instead of being limited to left to right or front to back, now we can go all the way around in a circle, 360 degrees. Now we can also go up and around to the bottom and back up in a 360 degrees. And now we can shift those planes all the way around the world. Okay? So timeline therapy is what introduced me to this way of thinking. It doesn't quite explain it in that way, but when it taught me to go up and over and back and past and then to the future, that's when I realized like this whole thing can be a complete circular expanding globe, if you will, a ball of shifting perspectives. Now all of a sudden you're seeing things from different perspectives. Like, okay, I'll give you one example. There's an image that you see on social media, sometimes Facebook, where the media is showing a guy that has a gun and he's chasing you, but you're running, and then they focus in on your rear foot, which has sharp business shoes on, and it looks like you're holding a knife, and then it looks like, because with their other hand, their hand's like open, like they're afraid of you, like you're the bad one. So that's a perspective shift. That's actually limiting perspectives. But if you were to expand that view all the way up to seeing the whole picture, also like, oh no, it's this other guy over here chasing you. Like you're not the bad one, they're the bad one. That's a very narcissistic technique, by the way. So a lot of us, I should say, we will feel very, very stuck in life. Like, oh, I can't do it. Oh, it's impossible. Life sucks. Like, I mean, it's just like you have a goal, you have a dream, or there's something you got to get done on your job or whatever, and you just feel hopeless. All it means is that you are stuck on one perspective. The goal is to get you to move left, move right, move front, move back, move up, move down, left to right to middle to slightly middle right. When we can get you to look at things from different perspectives, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that's actually not very hard at all. All right, let's take Elon Musk. He's trained in something called, oh God, it's a form of engineering, and I can't remember the exact type, but that way of being trained shows your brain how to look at things from different perspectives. Now, you can apply this to your life, and all of a sudden you get to shift things. And this will open up the possibilities to you, okay? See, there's some people who say, well, that's just life. No, that's just life from this one perspective. And by the way, this is the narcissist's number one problem. They are extremely linear, extremely focused, very left brain. They are literally stuck on going, this is the way life is. It's either good or it's bad, black or it's white. Either I'm rich or you're rich. It's extremely limited to two possibilities, and that's it. And that way of looking at life forces you to become a very forceful person. You must push people and force and control the situation if you want to get what you want. Because the either or mentality is the push mentality. There's no other options. That is a really dark, grim, horrible place to be. One of the biggest things I learned from Tony Robbins was options and possibilities, and NLP absolutely reinforces this. So a lot of people will try to knock down either a congressional or presidential candidate or whatever, and say, oh, well, they didn't pay their taxes, and you're like, well, what are you talking about? What they did was they studied. See, here's the deal. I've said this in a past video. Know the rules, and know the laws, and you will get ahead in life. So Tony Robbins explained this to us. He's like, the only reason why these people are richer than you is because they understand the rules. And you don't know that you can do this. It's totally legal, but if you don't know it, then you wouldn't know to do it. It's fair to all. It's equal. It's legal. There's nothing wrong with it morally. And so, a good example is, the whole Hillary Clinton and Trump thing. And Trump just goes, well, yeah, but that's just because I took advantage of the laws that you guys made. If you don't like the laws, change the laws. In other words, anyone can do it. He said Hillary does it. Her constituents do it. The people that donate to her campaign are doing it. Everyone's doing it because it's a law. It's a rule. You're allowed. Okay, I'm going to give you a good example. Okay, I went to a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar. He's the guy that does the financial stuff, and he's really into investing, buying properties, and and flipping them and selling them, etc. Or even apartment complexes. So there's one thing that I went to seminar. It's probably like $650. This is in the 90s, probably 95 or something. I don't remember when I went, or maybe it might have been 2001 actually. And it was kind of an expensive seminar. I think it was a 2.5-day seminar. I thought, yeah, it's kind of expensive for a 2.5-day seminar. But man, did I learn one thing that was worth all of it. Now this is shifting perspectives. So he created this board game, kind of like Monopoly, except it's not Monopoly at all. And you basically pick cards, and this decides what career you have and what you own. Okay, so one guy he owned an airport. He owned like $2.2 billion worth of assets and jet planes and whatever. And then another person was an entrepreneur, and he was worth like 10 million or 20 million. Then there was another one that was, I don't know, business owner. Well, guess what card I picked? Yeah, a waiter. A freaking waiter. So I was pretty upset, and I remember looking at it. So each table had a trained person to walk you through the game. And I was like, oh, this is so unfair. He goes, no, Michael. He goes, I think you're going to be surprised. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, there's just no chance that I'm gonna be. And here's what it was: financially free. With me, because that was the goal of the game, was the first person that becomes financially free wins. And most people think that means you have to be worth billions of dollars, or at least millions, and have investments and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so it does not mean that. So as we were playing the game, about 20 minutes in, or maybe 30 minutes into the game, I actually won. I was the first person that became financially free. Now here's why. The guy that owned the airport had a massive overhead. He had millions, I think it was hundreds of millions of overhead. Like he had to pay for things to get fixed, the jet planes to get repaired, replaced. He had to buy one or two every year. I mean, he just, like, massive amounts of money went out the door, which means massive amounts of money had to come in. And then there was the entrepreneur and the other person. So let me cut to the chase. So what happened was, I think in the game I ended up, what did I do? I think I ended up buying a small apartment complex or something like that. I think it was even less than that. Or it might have been I wrote some books or something like that, because that's what I ended up doing with my business for real, and it was because of this. And what ended up happening, so I ended up having a condo, and my monthly mortgage, or whatever you call it, was something like $1,100 or something. Plus, so you add everything up. How much is your travel, the amount of food you pay, clothing you pay for every month, every year, gas, travel, transportation, etc. So you add it all up. And the whole goal is to have income that's coming in when you don't have to work. So he calls that passive income or residual income. So I'm going to give you an example. One of my goals was to set up my website to where I could sell my books to where they make enough money to where I don't actually have to work. So this is the point of residual or passive income. So you become financially free when, so let's say I buy, I don't know, 2-bedroom condo, and I've got a car. By the way, I love this car. This is not my car. I have the same model, same year, but this car is really fixed up. So this is kind of one of my goals. Like, I'm thinking of, I might do this to my car. All right. So essentially you had all your expensive, everything from gas, just everything, right? Including, let's say I hired social media people to run my website, and maybe had to put ads on Facebook once a week, twice a week, or every day, whatever. So you add all that up, and now when your residual or passive income comes in, now what is passive income? Passive income is, and here's just one example. You set up a business to where it runs on its own. So let's take a restaurant. My mom and dad owned 2 restaurants, 2 bars, and they had a manager for each one. So essentially what you do is you find a manager that can run those managers and keep them in line, and then those managers run the businesses. So now all of a sudden my mom and dad don't have to do nothing. because the head manager is the head manager and he checks all the businesses. The other head managers of each individual business, they are hired and trained and have worked in the business for at least 2 or 3 years, and they know how to run the business by themselves. So they hire, they fire, they order, they, all that stuff. So all of a sudden, like, they just have to come in once a week or something, look around and make sure everything's going good. So essentially they literally don't have to do anything. So with my business, I thought, that would be really cool if I could set up my website and social media to the extent to where I literally, so I had to write the books. That took me to write all of the books, probably took me 2 years, but it took me it was 9 months to write my book, Correct Female Code. But I wrote it before and I really didn't like it, something, I don't know why. So I just threw that away and I started from scratch and I rewrote it. So it probably took me a year and 3 months or 4 months. But once I uploaded that to my website and social media, it started selling on its own. Like, I don't have to do anything. Like, I go to Twitter, I put links on there, my social media, blah, 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 and people just start buying it. So I wrote 2 books for women, Why Men Just Don't Get It, and Every Woman's Need for Love and Emotional, or the battle for, Every Woman's Battle, the Need for Love and Emotional Fulfillment. So now I'm starting to make more sales off of that. So once you set it up, you don't have to touch it. It just works all on its own, literally. So in this game that I was playing at the, he sells this game, by the way. It's to get your brain to understand what money really is and how to work it. So what happened was I ended up, I forget if I wrote books like imaginary in this game, and then, or I bought a property and then I hired a manager and trained them and to run. It was a small, not hotel, but apartment complex. And I forget what I did, but I ended up being the first one to have to be financially free, because all of a sudden this business that's running on its own, and I literally only have to check in once or twice a month or maybe once a week to say what's going on, how's it going, let me look at the paperwork, let me go to my bookkeeper, we're going to go over the paperwork, the taxes, the money, the income. And that's the goal, to where you do essentially almost nothing. So here's the thing. Whatever it was I did in that game, again, I forgot what it was that I ended up setting up, is my income, I'm just going to make it up. I don't remember what. Let's say it was, I don't know, $1,500 a month for my mortgage or rent, and then I had to pay so much for food and clothing. Let's say everything came out to be, I'm going to make something, let's say $7,500 for every single expense I had per month. So this business that I set up to run on its own all of a sudden started making $7,900, $8,000, $9,000, which means I don't have to work at all, and all my bills are paid. I still get to go to the beach. I still get to buy clothes. I still get to go out to dinner, 5 days a week or 3 days a week. I still get to go to the movies as much as I used to, etc., etc. And now I don't have to work at all. That is financial freedom. So here I was my whole life thinking I've got to make $1 million or $2 million a year. I've got to invest. I've got to save. I've got to be careful. No, you just have to set up a system that runs on itself, such as selling books or even a business where you train people, and it brings enough income in to pay for all your bills, including travel, vacations, Christmas presents, gifts, everything. Once I understood that, I had a massive aha moment. I was like, oh, no kidding. So there's another guy that wrote a book called Live Rich, and then he wrote a book called Die Broke. And then there's a thing called religion that says money is the root of all evil. Now that's one hell of a perspective. It's a wrong perspective, but it's a perspective. Because that's not what it actually says, but that's what they'll tell you it says. So I've already started this plan. I've got it interacting right now. Now I'm not financially free yet, but that's the goal. But even then, my next goal is to build up my seminar business, to travel around and teach the courses for men and women on love, communication, and understanding. So in these 2 books, Live Rich and Die Broke, there's quite a few, but I'm going to share just 2 of them briefly. You can read those books, Live Rich and Die Broke by, let me grab it. by Stephen Kollin, Stephen Kollin. One of the things that he said that really stood out to me, kind of like it made me laugh and smile, and I was like, man, I never thought about that. He said the best time to get a better job is when you already have a job, because you don't need a job. You're not desperate. You're not going, oh my God, and you're not freaking out. A lot of people that apply for jobs do so when they don't have a job. And therefore, they're walking there like, I really need this job and I'm desperate. And that comes across in the interview. And the interviewer is looking at you like, well, what's going on? And a lot of times it gives the interviewer leverage. Like, okay, well, we'll start just a lower pay, a lower job, a lower this. And you don't get what you want. But let's say you have a job that's paying the bills and you're good. You're just thinking like, hey, I wonder if I could get more money. And he says, look, go for it. Go bananas. Go nuts. Let's say you're making $60,000 a year. Apply for a job that's at least $250,000 a year, plus two-week paid vacations a year, plus vacation pay for Christmas, plus this, plus that. He goes, go for the gold. He goes, what's the worst thing that can happen? They say, no, we're not going to hire you. What's the best thing that could happen? That's right. You could get the job of your dreams. And the other thing is you're getting interview experience. You're learning how to feel comfortable in interviews and understanding them better. Therefore, it adds a comfort level. Now, this is really important. Someone who walks in and is desperate, the interviewer is going to be like, well, what's wrong with this person? Like, there's this tension, right? So you're not going to get hired. But the person that walks in like, yeah, I don't need this job. I don't want to see. It's like you shift the dynamic. All of a sudden now you're telling the interviewer, well, what do you have to offer me? Versus, oh, I'll take anything. Like what can I get? What can I beg your majesty? Now it's all of a sudden and they, even if you don't say it like that, they can feel like, this person isn't begging me. They don't have that perfect smile and their eyes wide open. Like all of that's gone. You're just relaxed and calm, and you're actually interested going, well, like, what do you guys have to offer me? Like, what are the benefit packages? What's the insurance? What is this? What is that? And all of a sudden it changes the dynamic, the energy in the interviewer. And now they're trying to get you and they're trying to fight to keep you because you're not desperate. Not only are you more likely to get the job, you're also more likely for them to offer you better benefits and higher pay. All we have done is shifted your perspective. We've shown you another perspective. Like, man, I never thought of looking at it from that angle. When all you see around you is awesome, you know you have made it. Welcome to awesome. Awesome is when you're at the top of the mountain and you can see all the paths, because when you're at the top you can see how you can get up and where the blockages are. So that's essentially what you're doing. You're looking to other people saying, hey, I'm stuck, what do I do? And like, well, go to the right. And you're like, well, no, I can't because it's all bushes and there's a cliff over there. And like, just trust me, go to the right and you're going to be able to get up the mountain. And a lot of people are like, no, I can't see it. The path is straight and ahead of me. It's like, no, it's not, because there's a drop off and there's no access from that direction. But you can't see it because you haven't gone there yet. And this is where faith kicks in. So sometimes God's nudging you, urging you, like you get a feeling inside to do it this other way or to go this other way. And you're like, yeah, but that's not the way to do it. And it's kind of like God's like, just trust me, just do it. It'll work. So here's the deal. We learned something called reframing. Now there's a bunch of other things we learned, but this is a real good example. Like you're looking at something from this degree, this angle, and it's just like it's impossible. Well, what we do is we reframe you and reframe. It's like one reframe to another, and it's shifting you around that circle to the right or to the left more and more and more and more and more to where you're like, oh, I can do that. Or you can have a really deep emotional problem. Like when my best friend Marlon died, I was sad for a long time. And it was just one perspective shift of these two soldiers sitting in their, not bunker, where they dug their foxhole. And the third buddy was out in front, and they got the enemy threw a hand grenade, and it was right on him, and it blew him up. And they both saw it. Well, one made a decision that life sucks, life's not worthwhile. Well, they followed up and found that guy like 15 years later or 20 years later, and he was homeless, he was hooked on heroin and drugs, and he was just had nothing. But then they went and found the guy that was right next to him, that saw it from the same perspective physically. The same guy getting blown up in front of him. And he ended up owning his own. He became a successful lawyer, got his own law firm, and then he at that time when they're interviewing him, they said, "Well, what was it that made you so successful?" And he said, "I decided in that moment that every moment in life is precious, that you have to make the most of every moment and get the most out of life." Whereas the other guy's decision was, life's not worthwhile, life's like it's not meaningful, like basically life sucks, there's no reason to live, etc. So his life went down to hell. It can be a heaven on earth or a hell on earth. It's all your perspective. Now here's what timeline therapy does, and then I'm going to wrap this up with those two stories. So with timeline therapy, you float up above your timeline. Now first we have to elicit your timeline. You have to find your timeline, and I'll walk you through how to do that, okay? Then what we can do, you can go to the future or you can go to the past. Now, so what we do when it comes to emotional issues that are locked in, especially during the imprinting stage when you're really young, that's when it's like recorded and it's like burnt into your system. It's like locked in. When I was in psychology class learning about how this stuff can get locked into your system, recorded, I thought, well, how do you change it? Well, it was essentially NLP and especially timeline therapy that really made me go, oh, okay, so we can actually go into your nervous system and we can reframe stuff. We can shift perspectives. Now, here's the thing. Not all therapeutic interventions are, how to explain this? Not all, here's the funny thing. Now, watch this. Not all traumatic life, what's the word? Issues that you've had your entire life, not all of them come from trauma. Some of them come from a mere misunderstanding. Now watch this. Two powerful stories, okay. But also very funny. Now watch this. So when I was a little kid, the rule was you could have one piece of dessert after dinner, but you had to finish your dinner first before you could eat it. Otherwise, you weren't allowed to eat your dessert. Now, my two older brothers, they were probably around 11 and 12 or something like that. And I was about, I'm going to guess 4 years old, 4.5 maybe. And then my younger brother was about 3.5 or so. And then my next brother up was about 7, I think, something like that. Yeah, maybe 6. Well, my older brother stole my younger brother's cupcake, and they stole my brother just 1.5 years older than me, stole his, and they were crying, and mom and dad were yelling and screaming, "God damn it, all that stuff, right?" Well, I was a smart one, so I went and grabbed my cupcake with my left hand, and I ate with my right hand, right? So I'm eating and eating, and I'm just really happy, not going to get my cupcake. Well, next thing you know, I think my brother Gary finished, and my mom went and got him another cupcake, and then my brother Joey, he got a cupcake too. And I finished, and now it's my turn, and I look down in front of my plate, and I'm like, where the hell's my cupcake? Oh my God! And I'm freaking out. I'm crying. Damn it! I look at my brother, where is it? Because my other brother Charlie, about 10 or 11, was sitting to my right. And I'm accusing him of stealing it. Where is it? And everyone's laughing. And I mean, they're just laughing and laughing. And my mom and dad are like, it's in your hand. Well, I look to my right hand, the one that I was eating with. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I'm just losing. Well, maybe not losing it, but I was really upset. And I was also upset because everybody was laughing. I looked to my mom and dad for support, and they're just laughing and laughing. And my sister Gina's like, "It's in your hand," and I'm holding up my right hand. No, it's not. And they're like, "Your other hand." I'm like, "What?" So finally, I think someone to my left, I don't know who it was, probably my older brother, my other older brother. He grabs it, or someone did, and puts it in my face, and like, it's right there. I was like, oh, okay. And all of a sudden, everyone's laughing. It was like a relief, and I was eating it, and I was happy, and everything was fine. I completely forgot about it. But here's the weird thing. All of a sudden I had trust issues with everybody in every situation. And I mean into my teens, into my 20s, until I started, I didn't know, even though I learned timeline therapy, I didn't really think that, this memory didn't come up. But in my mid to late 20s, I was like, oh, that's right. Because I had an issue of trust come up, and it turns out I had just misplaced something. But I was really hurt, and I was upset, and the trust was lost between me and this person. But then I went, oh, wait a minute. This is a time, because I ended up finding the thing. It was actually put in this other place, and it was there. So I did the timeline therapy, I did healing work on it, etc. And boom, I haven't had these issues since. But here's my point. A lot of people, even look at me. How many that's like probably 2.5 decades that one simple, literally hilarious, humorous, they call it the cupcake gate issue, lasted for a long time, and it had a real impact on my life. So a lot of fears, a lot of anxiety you have, a lot of issues of trust and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, for a lot of us on this channel, it did come from literal mind games from narcissist abuse, for sure. But even those things, when you clear them up from childhood, boom, it pops. Okay, literally, there's it's like a pearl necklace. Now here's the genius of timeline therapy. Now Dr. Fritz Perls, he was a psychologist, or maybe it's a psychiatrist, way back in the days. He essentially said, if you can find the first memory of this issue, so let's say it's trust or fear or anxiety or whatever, if you can go back to the first memory and heal it and clear it, it's like breaking off the end pearl of a necklace of pearls, and all of a sudden all of the memories, they slide right off. It's not the memories that you forget, it's the emotions that release and let go. And that's why when you do therapy with therapists, you're just picking memories in the middle and the end, and somewhere around there, maybe towards the beginning. But if you don't get that first one, it does not matter. That issue is still gonna hang on. You have to get to the first one. Now in timeline therapy, they do a physical perspective shift where you imagine floating up in the air, going all the way back. Now, you can see it from the future looking past, like looking down on it, or you can go right above it looking down, and you can go further into the past and then turning around and looking at it. These are massive perspective shifts. It may seem like nothing at the time, but sometimes just by doing those 3 things, the problem's gone. And then you go down into the memory as an adult, and you experience it as an adult, and you realize like, oh, this is no big deal. But the real goal of regardless of what position and perspective you look at it from, is to learn the learnings that you were always meant to learn in the first place. Now here's the even more bizarre thing about all of this. It could have truly been a traumatic incident, a car accident, your brother got killed in front of you, or who knows what happened, okay, when you were 3 years old. The imprinting stage is when things are really hard to change. And this is what these techniques in NLP and timeline therapy, etc., are masters of shifting. I know because I've done it with myself and a ton of clients over the last 3 decades. Here's the really, really odd thing. It could be an extremely abusive, narcissistic, violent, physically abusive mother, parent, who had just beat you and just did the worst things in the world to you and terrorized you. Now here's the really, really, I know this can sound bizarre. One of the healings that I had when I went down into the memory, it was like, oh, she just doesn't know any better. She's just oh, that person is just a really messed up person. They're just really screwed up in the head. Sometimes the learnings have nothing to do with you. It's just sometimes it's just a realization of like, oh, that person was just really screwed up that day, or the friend died the day before, they were not in a good space mentally, or man, that person is just a screwed up person. Sometimes it's a realization like that where it had nothing to do with me, like, wow, that's all it was. and then you come back to the present moment, and all of a sudden, boom, that problem that you had, that you're okay. I'll give you a good example. So a lot of times parents, like, let's use my cupcake gate incident. So a lot of times this kid could just have mistrust issues, okay? And then their parent goes, well, that's just Michael. He just doesn't trust anyone. And that just becomes one of your personality quirks, and people are like, well, that's just the way they are. But it can really, really affect your life. I mean, you can't get into relationships. You have a hard time trusting people with anything. And then you do this timeline therapy, and like, oh, that's all it was. I had the cupcake in my left hand. It was like, literally, it was not a traumatic incident. But that can cause traumatic experiences for decades. Even though you're like, well, yeah, but you, like, immediately once you saw the cupcake, everything went back to fine, normal, and you stopped crying and you were actually happy. Sometimes it's just because when you're, say, 7 years old or whenever, someone could have been a teacher, Sunday school teacher, could have been a neighbor, could have been a friend, could have been your father. And they just said, well, blah, 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 and that's just the way it is. And you said, oh, okay. And that's what you heard, that's what you accepted, and you went through life with this really kind of negative, shitty belief. And then you go through therapy 25 years later and you're like, man, that one belief held me back for 30 or 25 years, and it was nothing. It was just something my dad said one day, and he wasn't even really being that serious. You can clear these things up and have less and less resistance. These things are just holding you back, making life hard, causing you to make the worst decisions because you never went back and thought, I've been living, but because a lot of times you forget about it. It's unconscious. These are just beliefs that you accepted as a child, and you've been going through life like this, and it's been completely, totally holding you back because you're like, well, this is the belief, blah, 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 and it's been holding you back. But one day you revisited it and you went, that's a really dumb belief. Why did I ever accept that? So a long time ago in the 90s, I had already been certified as a master practitioner. I might even finished. No, I didn't actually. I just finished a practitioner course. So I'd gone through the Tony Robbins courses, this and that, but I was just learning and absorbing any little thing that I could. So I found out that Tony Robbins was having a 3-day seminar called Skills of Power in San Francisco, and I was like, oh, I've got to go. I didn't even care what it was. I needed to learn more, right? Well, it was essentially teaching you and walking you through how to use specific NLP skills, okay? And it turned out Tony himself was not going to teach it, but Dr. Bob Bays, the head, at the time, probably not now, he's probably too old, he was the head psychologist of the psychology department in the University of Syracuse. So I was a really involved guy. I did all the exercises, really, doing stuff and doing the exercises and really involved in class. And so I got to know Dr. Bob Bays a little here, a little there. We talked and he said, oh, do it like this, do this, remember this. And so what ended up happening was the third day, he got kind of intrigued. He goes, what do you do, or what have you done? Well, I went to this university, I studied this, I've done that. I was a state champion in boxing, blah, 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 blah. He goes, well, what are you doing now? I was like, well, I went back to college and I forget what I said. And then he goes, what do you want to do with your life? I go, I want to do this, meaning NLP, Destroyin, hypnosis, etc., etc. And I told him how I've been reading all the books and studying Dr. Bandler and Grinder's work and doing this and that. And he goes, well, then drop out of college. And I was like, wait, what? Now, this is a professor. He retired as a professor at Syracuse University, the head of the department. And I'm like, wait, what? He said, Michael, if you want to learn how to do NLP and Destroyin hypnosis, you have to go to training, certifications, seminars, etc. You will never learn this in a university or a college. I go, why? Because I had asked him, I go, what college should I go to study this? He goes, oh no, Michael, this is too new. He goes, they won't even begin to integrate this into the private colleges for another 25 or 30 years. I'm like, why? And he goes, that's just the way the system works. And I went into my all like mad at God and yelling and screaming. No, not inside I did, but not in front of him. And let me give you a little quick thing right here before I come back to this story, because it's a very impactful event that happened. So when he told this to me, I was seriously depressed. I mean, I was not happy. This because my dream was to go to college and get a master's or doctorate degree, and like that was like really what it was all about since I was in second grade. And here this guy was convincing me, don't do that. It's a waste of your time. Go and study. Go to every seminar, every certification, read every book you can on the subject, and get really good at it. Well, I went back to college after this 3-day seminar. And I don't remember if it was the first day or second day or even the first week, but I do remember this. I went to my biology class one day. It was about 10 a.m. And I remember walking. It was the big auditorium one where you're like, it goes all the way up, all those chairs and students, and then the teachers down there in front. And there was probably 150, 200 students in this class. It was a pretty big class. I remember just sitting there, and the teachers talking, and people would, regularly would get up and walk out because it was like an hour and a half class, and they would smoke a cigarette or go to the bathroom and come back. So people getting up and coming and going was a normal thing. I also remember it was a very impersonal class where nobody really knew anyone, nobody really socialized. It was just like you were here to get the grade because this was a requirement to get your degree. So I am mulling over and over what Dr. Bob Bay said to me, and I'm just like, I don't know. And so I just got up. I packed, and I remember sitting there, I looked at the professor, and I looked around the class, and I'm like, this isn't for me. I got up, packed my stuff, and I just walked out. The entire class stopped. Every single person looked at me, and the professor, for the first time, just stopped talking and stared. And I looked at him, and I walked out, and I realized somehow each and every person was like, yeah, that guy's not coming back. Best decision of my life. So back to the seminar, Dr. Bob Bayes. It was the third day. We were going for a break, and he's, well, what are you going to do with your life, young man? I was like, oh, blah, 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 blah. I want to do this, and where do I go to college for? And he goes, you can't. And I'm like, what? And I was really upset, and he could tell. He goes, you're just like my daughter, McKenna Bayes. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, Michael, she wants to be a professional ballet dancer. I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking, what? Like, this is nothing like me, man. And he goes, she, instead of following her dreams, she went to a college. In fact, the college was, I believe it was UCLA, if I remember right. Yeah, it was UCLA. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? And he goes, well, and because I'm looking at this guy like, you're a professor. You're supposed to tell us to get our degrees. And he goes, no. He goes, I told my daughter to drop out. He goes, she had an opportunity to go to the New York Ballet or some specialized school like the New York Ballet, this real big thing. And I had heard of it before because my ex-girlfriend was in ballet in high school, etc. And I was like, really? She's, oh, yeah, they invited her. She's that good. I'm like, and she turned that down? He said, yeah, because she believes you're supposed to get a college degree. And I keep telling her, no, go after your dreams. You can go back to college when you're 50. And that was an impact. I thought, I can't always come back if I want to. And so that did have an impact. But what happened was he ended up giving me her phone number to her college dorm. And he goes, I want you to call my daughter. I want you to tell her your story, everything you told me, your dreams, and the fact that you're going to college. So I didn't call her right away. In fact, I didn't call her for probably 3 months. I remember seeing her number in like one of my drawers when I opened it up to grab something. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to call her. This is really weird. I mean, she doesn't know me, probably doesn't even know that I'm going to call, etc. So I did call her and talked to her about it. And she just at first, well, who's this? And why are you calling me? I said, well, your dad. I went to the seminar, blah, blah, blah. She goes, oh, yeah, that's my dad. He's trying to convince me to go after my dreams, blah, blah, blah. So we had a really interesting conversation. So here's McKenna's story. Here's what happened to her. When she was a little kid, probably about 3 or 4 years old, they had a nice home, 2-story home, and at this day they were barbecuing in the backyard with their friends. It was, I don't know if they said it was 4th of July or birthday party, but they were barbecuing in the backyard. Everybody was back there. And she was in, I think it was the living room, so the front of the house. And so what happened was she just happened to look out the big plate glass window, slid the curtains open, and she was looking, and what happened was They had a Mercedes-Benz, a brand new Mercedes-Benz they've had for like, I think 6 months or 7 months or something like that. And it had been in the shop more than they had it to drive. So Dr. Bob Bass had said, I called the dealership and they said, yeah, you know what, you got a lemon. We're really sorry. What we're going to do is we're going to take it from you. We're going to send a driver to come pick it up. And you can come down and you can pick out a Mercedes-Benz. So it was essentially what they call a lemon, and I think they had a lemon law back then, but regardless, Mercedes was like, yeah, it's a lemon, it's no good, that car's just messed up. So what happened was, McKenna's a little girl, she doesn't know anything about this. Now, when she was in the house, there's 1 or 2 people like her mother and father in the kitchen grabbing stuff, blah, blah, blah. She walked out front, and all of a sudden she looks out the door, or looks out the window, and what happened was, what she didn't see was a driver had drove this other guy there, dropped him off, and then took off. He had the keys, and he got in the car, he started the car, and that's why she looked out the window, because she heard the car start. So she looked out the window, and the car was parked on the street in front of their lawn, and she couldn't see who was in the car from that perspective. And what happened was the car drove off, and she starts freaking out. She starts screaming and yelling. She's going into a full-blown panic attack, thinking her entire family left her all alone. So she's running around throughout the house, yelling and screaming and crying. And then what happened was, she just happened to go into the kitchen, and she looked out the back window, and she's like, oh, everyone's in the backyard. So Dr. Bob Bass had said to us at the seminar, said, she suddenly, out of nowhere, had all these challenges and problems with being abandoned. Like, we couldn't leave her for 5 minutes. She would scream, she would cry, she would yell. And the thing about it is, she'd never been abandoned in her life. But she had massive panic attacks due to abandonment issues. And so he had done every kind of therapy, sent her to therapists, done everything for years, and nothing worked. Now remember, when she was in the front room, she saw the car take off. She ran around for about 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it was, screaming and yelling and freaking out. And then she looked out the back window. She's like, oh, everyone's back there. And suddenly she was fine. Again, nothing bad happened. She wasn't molested. She wasn't beaten. She wasn't raped. She didn't see her father get beat up. Like nothing actually happened. And yet, this had a traumatic effect on her entire life until they learned about going back to the very first memory and doing perspective shifts, reframing, submodality shifts, and all this other stuff that we learn in NLP. And all of a sudden, she's fine. She went off to college fine. She got a degree fine. Like, everything worked out. My point is, a lot of you have these issues where it really wasn't something traumatic, and yet it's having a massive effect on you. The number one thing that I do with people is what we call shifting perspectives. Because otherwise this stuff will drain you, it'll drag you down, it will hold you back from doing what you want, whether it's going out to a party, going after your dreams, whatever it is. The more you heal this stuff, the more you clear this stuff. And remember, one of the biggest things is learning. In timeline therapy, one of the things that we tell our clients is it's the learning in which that you're supposed to receive and understand, and then your emotions will heal and let go. And now it's just a memory attached to a learning, because your emotions, when you have emotions that keep, it's literally like a flag, some negative emotion. It's like a flag saying, "Hey, man, you got to come back here because you were supposed to learn something." Because it's the learnings that will release the emotion, the negative emotions. Now here's another interesting part of this, or perspective from this. Okay, you know how people go away to war and some come back and they live normal, healthy lives, but then other ones, they have PTSD or they're just traumatized and they can't function in society? Well, here's the deal. We find out it's not the trauma in the war that caused this. It's the stuff that they had from childhood that got like a pearl necklace that kept building, adding a pearl, adding a pearl, adding a pearl, adding a pearl. For the people who never had those issues as childhood, that wasn't ingrained or recorded into their system or embedded, they came back and lived normal lives. It just wasn't an issue. Now, the reason why we know this is because of the healing work we've done with people who have gone through wars, who've come back with traumatic experiences and they can't function, they have fear, they have PTSD, is we took them back all the way back to a first memory in childhood of this issue that happened, and brrr, all the pearls fell off, and now they're functioning normal. Someone asked me, like, well, has any of this stuff been studied? Like, oh yeah, it's been studied in major universities throughout the world. And one of them is UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. They had NLP practitioners come in and work with patients before they went under the knife and had surgery. And they found out it was something like 10% up to 17% or something like that, where they would heal faster. Now, I don't mean 10% of the patients, but the patients would heal 10% up to 70% faster in general overall. As I've been doing this video, I'd say about 10 minutes ago, I had this really big realization, and it's because back in the late 80s and 90s, people were really hammering us, oh, so you're into that new age psychology stuff, huh? And they would just really hammer you. I mean, it's like, yeah, of course, like we're learning, we're developing, new things have been discovered. We could help people a lot better now. Well, back then it was all, oh, that's weird, because people didn't change with the old psychology, and that's what was considered the norm. The norm was, number one, you don't change. Number two, you just go to therapy for years and years and years, even decades. And then you get on medication, you take medication for the rest of your life. That is what was considered normal. I mean, what about actual healing where you don't have the issues at all? They're gone. They're healed. You're done. People didn't feel comfortable with that. When someone actually healed, they're like, well, that's weird. You're different. Yeah, they're happier. They're more at peace. They sleep better. They're functioning better. They're making more money, and on and on and on. Like, what's wrong with that? I mean, just imagine if we said that the technology, that we stuck with what we had in 1977. Oh, that's weird. You're into that new age technology stuff, huh? Well, yeah, our technology is advancing. Oh, so you're into that new age car stuff where they make better engines. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's weird. Or how about, oh, you're into that new age science stuff, learning that new stuff. That's weird. Everything on the planet is moving forward and advancing. Period. I know I said this a long time ago, but I remember sitting in psychology class my freshman year learning about Freud, and the teacher was going on and on about how the reason why we took Freud's suggestions and beliefs is because he did the most cocaine in the room, he was the loudest, most arrogant, and most confident, and he was basically a bully, so he bullied people into believing his theories and his philosophies, and therefore Freud is the father of modern psychology. He did so much cocaine that his teeth were falling out and he had wooden teeth. I'm not kidding. And the professor was saying this proudly as if this was his hero. Number one, I'm thinking, this guy's a drug addict and this is the guy that we're listening to? Number two, he's been dead for 100 years. And psychology didn't advance from that point forward, essentially. I mean, between the time he died in like 1939 up until about the, say, 80s, there was almost no advancement at all. It was just essentially the same thing going round and round in circles. And yet it was driving me nuts because I'm sitting there in psychology class in college going, everything else, computer science was launching. It was taking off. Technology, science, physics, everything was taking off except for therapy. Psychology. I literally prayed to God. I was like, there has to be something better than this. There has to be something. And sure enough, there was a couple different technologies, timeline therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, Ericksonian hypnosis, etc., that were taking off. And lo and behold, luckily, I went to the right seminar at the right time, and I heard about all of this. So what's holding you back? Is it a limiting belief? Is it a fear? Is it an emotion? Is it a feeling? Is it a decision you made at childhood? Is it something, maybe a rule that you took on and you weren't quite conscious of it? Whatever it is, you can shift it for sure. Hey, this is Mike Kollin. Thank you very much for listening to this. If you'd like, you can make a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. please click the like button, click subscribe, make a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless you guys.